Okay.
Should be going live here in a second.
Okay.
All right. Hey, folks, I have a different kind of platform going on right now. I'm going to go ahead and share this shortly on other social media platforms. But let me do this before we get started. I do want to thank my sponsors at 5 Star Guitars for being a huge support for the show. They've been around for a couple of decades. They've been ranked #1 in music merchandising by the NAMM Association. And if you go to 5starguitars.com/all-access-live, enter the promo code of all-access-15, you're going to save 15% off everything you see, and you'll have no sales tax as well if you're ordering outside of Oregon. So go to 5starguitars.com/all-access-live if you want to be a famous rocker like my next guest. All the way from Portland, Oregon, I've got John Neff. John, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing excellent. I'm happy in my retirement.
Yeah, man. So for people that don't know, do you want to give them a little insight into how long this retirement plan has been developing for you?
Well, I made my first record in August of 1965. I was 14 years old. I've worked in studios ever since, and after 56 years, I'd had enough. So last year I retired and sold everything.
Oh man. Okay. You retired here in Portland. How long have you been here in the area?
11 years.
Okay. And prior to that, you were in Hawaii, is that right? Or you were in California?
I was in Marin County for 9 years.
Okay.
And I worked at the Plant Studios, and I had my own studio there. And then before that, I was with David Lynch for 9 years in Hollywood.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
Before that, I was in Maui.
All right. So let's go back to the 14-year-old John Neff. Were you playing instruments then, or were you just because you mentioned recording your first album at 14? So were you playing bass, or were you engineering that record, or what was your plan?
I was playing lead guitar, and I
Okay.
wrote the song.
All right.
So we went into a small studio with an 8-channel board and recorded to a 3-track Ampex tape machine, tube tape machine, and mixed it into glorious mono.
Oh yeah, nice.
And I was so entranced by the process that I never looked back. I started hanging out at the studio as soon as I could drive.
How did you get into that studio in the first place? I mean, who hooked that gig up? Because it's hard to get into a proper recording studio at 14. Who had the connections?
My dad.
Okay.
He used Columbia Records for his custom pressings. He had an audio visual company in Detroit, and they made training films and sales films for the auto companies, and he had an in with the studio.
Okay. Man, we've got a lot of Detroit guys in the Portland area, in the music scene. I think you probably know Mike Skill, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I've done a bunch of work with Mike, and he's got crazy things to say about old school Detroit days for sure. But so your dad had the contacts with the studio, and he saw John recording or rehearsing at home, saw you practice your guitar, and he decided, all right, we need to get some proper experience under the boy. Did you?
Yeah, we were making up our own songs.
Okay.
I was influenced by Chuck Berry and the Beach Boys. Nice. And that was the style of guitar that I played. But I was also influenced by Dick Dale.
Oh, right on.
And his surf music. His guitar tone floored me.
Okay.
And so on my record, I'm playing a Gibson Melody Maker guitar that I bought in 1963 and a Sears Twin 12 Dan Electro amp, and it has such a unique sound.
You bought that guitar in 63. So what year were you recording this then?
65.
Okay. All right. 65. And at that time you said Chuck Berry, Dick Dale, Like, so you had the surf guitar, you had that kind of blues, that the blues influenced rock and roll stuff, and Beach Boys. So, were you a singer as well?
No, we had a
Okay.
singer. His name
Okay.
was Chris Chappell.
All right. You still connect? You still keep in touch with your old bandmates from those days?
We had a 50th reunion
My God.
in 2015 of the record, and all the surviving band members, one had passed away, but all the surviving band members were there, and we got together and had a get together and a meeting and some pictures.
Right. So, I mean, people that may not realize how sort of wide the depth and the breadth of your career has been, but these other guys in the band, did they continue to go on and pursue music as a full-time career?
One did. His
Okay.
name is Dale Cath. He was the rhythm guitar player for me in the Ascots in 1964 to 1967.
Okay. And where's he living now?
He's in Clarkston, Michigan,
Okay.
which is almost right next door to where we were when we made the record.
Okay. In the mid 60s. So you just predated artists that were really blowing up there. I mean, I know Alice Cooper was really, primarily Michigan then, right? Before he'd gone on to Phoenix
I
and
knew Vinny
okay. All right.
in Detroit, and in 1968, we were rehearsing on Brown Road in Pontiac Township, Michigan, and their their farm was on Brown Road, and we knew each other, and we'd hang out in each other's practice places.
Really? Okay. So you got to watch that evolution of
Oh yes.
Vincent Furnier, Alice Cooper's sort of his legendary sort of novelty status, right? I mean, he started out as probably somebody fairly normal, I would imagine, right? And then developed
Yep.
more of a shock vibe.
The Alice part came along later. They
Okay,
were a good band before they even had that name.
sure. That and stylistically, what kind of stuff were they doing?
Just straight out rock and roll.
Okay, so yeah, it's not like you guys were competing for the same audience then at that point.
No,
Okay.
no, I was competing with Bob Seger.
Oh yeah, right. Another Michiganian. Is that how you pronounce it?
Michigander.
Michigander. All right. All right. And a bit before Ted Nugent sort of blew up in the scene. And
I knew Ted. We had
okay.
the same guitar instructor as kids.
All right.
Ted was a fabulous guitar player. I don't agree with his politics, but he's a great guitar player, and he was a good friend back in the 60s.
Isn't it sad that somebody's, sort of the pedestal that they get on outside of music can really change everybody's perspective? And I was a fan of some of the more, I don't know, the less successful stuff that Nugent did, even later in his career, like Tied Up in Love, when he came out with that, it really showed off a lot of his guitar, and it was big rock and roll stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of his politics either, but it's unfortunate that that's what becomes the first thing that people talk about anymore. Nugent, he's a legend, right? I mean, the guy has changed music in so many respects, and it's, I guess that's a fault of his own, right? That he used his platform for more than just music. But
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I just had Tyrone Hendricks, a drummer from, he's played with Prince. He's a local guy here, plays a lot of gigs, jazz gigs. And
I've recorded Tyrone.
I figured you probably had.
I did the Quick and Easy Boys album.
Oh, man. What a wicked drummer, right? But,
oh, yeah.
But he was talking about the sound in Oakland, that there was this distinctive sound. And then I started thinking about all these other guys that were from that area and realizing how many people I know from Michigan now. And really, there's an eclectic mix of different artists that have come from there that have really made a stamp. But there are so many prominent bands and artists that have come from that area that have changed the music industry. I mean, you got to be pretty proud. I've talked to Mike Skill about this a lot, that Romantics, were looking they were looking a lot at the New York scene, doing a lot of the CBGB's gigs and seeing the New York scene as an influence. But I'm blown away by how many, and even just across the border, right? You just hop over to Windsor and you've got all the Canadian artists that were really influenced by the Detroit scene too, right? So
My first television show was on CKLW Channel 9 in Windsor, Ontario.
really,
They started playing the Ascots record on their AM radio station, and they had us come in and do a show, Swingin' Time, which was an afternoon dance party.
okay. And you were playing live at that point?
No, we lip synced to the record.
Okay, I was gonna say, I mean, at that point, not many bands were doing live stuff, right?
No.
And obviously the Beatles had just broken, right? And so were you sort of looking at the success of a band like the Beatles and thinking this is what the Ascots really need to aspire to get?
No.
No,
The
not at all.
Beatles were new. I was more interested in the Beach Boys
Okay,
curve,
sure.
that kind of music.
Yeah.
It was more exciting to me guitar wise.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I've never been a lyrics guy until the last couple of years. And as somebody who's been an engineer and a producer and a musician, I know that probably just drives you crazy to hear, but I don't know what it is. I think it was as a drummer, I was influenced so much by the groove and the melody, and those are the first things that would connect with me and really resonate. And then the last couple of years, after having to slow down my life entirely, then I got a chance to rediscover music again. But when I would talk to other people who were really involved in production, they talked about like Pet Sounds, that of course, people have said it's the greatest example of a recording on the planet. Outside of your own work, of course, do you kind of agree with that assessment about Pet Sounds as being like sort of the prime goal, prime objective?
It's one of my favorite albums.
Okay.
I bought it new.
Yeah.
I saw Brian Wilson at the Schnitz here a few years ago, and he played the entire album live.
Wow, man.
It was stunning.
Yeah.
I love that album. I think the Beatles went further with Sergeant Pepper's.
Okay. In terms of production and just like stretching like pushing the entire envelope, or what would you say about that album that reached farther?
Well, the performances are stunning.
Yeah.
They weren't studio musicians. They were the band.
Right.
And the songs are just so stellar. I mean, I was given a file with the individual tracks for 4 songs from Sergeant Pepper's to look at mixing it in surround.
Oh, wow.
And so I got copies of the masters, and I couldn't cut it up and make it work in surround. It just fell apart. It
Really?
just didn't work.
Okay.
But getting into those tracks and listening to what they actually played was stunning.
Yeah.
That is, to me, the greatest album of that era.
Okay.
And it's followed by Pet Sounds and the Jimi Hendrix Experience album.
Okay. All from that generation then. So yeah, you've got sort of mid 60s there as the generation. Let's maybe jump forward to another decade. Like, what do you feel like is the greatest 70s record recorded?
Oh my, that would be Electric Light Orchestra, A New World Record. That's their double album.
Okay. Yeah.
It's stunning. It's so well made. I like all of ELO, but that record stands out as a production masterpiece.
I love that. Are you able to listen to a record and actually just appreciate it for the songwriting and not really listen to production, or is that just impossible now?
It's impossible.
I'll bet.
I have almost 4,000 albums, and I just got a brand new turntable last fall, and I've been listening to my albums again, and there's nothing like vinyl.
Yeah, I agree.
The analog, all analog signal chain, these records sound terrific.
I was even thinking about you in production because you've done so much in film too, and film and TV, really. So
Yeah,
can you watch a movie and not get lost in the score? Or is it just so distracting if you? Well, I guess that really depends on how it's recorded and how it's scored, right? Because I guess if it's done so well, you're not even really noticing. It just enhances the movie.
that's correct.
Okay.
But I didn't just record scores for movies. I mixed 24 feature films
Wow.
and 15 shorts.
Unbelievable.
And so you have to deal with dialogue, enhanced effects, and the music stem all at once, and create a 6-channel mix for the theater.
Okay.
It's quite a job.
I'll bet. Yeah. How do you even get into that kind of development? If you're producing a record, it's one thing, right? Because you're thinking in stereo, essentially.
Yep.
But when you started to get into film and like theater production, where do you start with something like that?
Well, The Straight Story was my first film in 1999 with David Lynch. I had never mixed a film before. I had never mixed in 5.1 before, and I had never recorded an orchestra before. All of those things I had to do for that film. I dipped into my record and radio history and realized that dialogue is king and everything else is junior to it. I can't
Okay.
remember the exact word. But so you have to work on the dialogue to get it intelligible so that every seat in the theater can hear it.
Sure.
And then the effects can't overwhelm it and the music can't overwhelm it. You have all that stuff supports dialogue.
Sure. Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, we've all seen movies that may have been mixed improperly, right?
Oh,
So
yes.
when the dialogue is kind of muddy and hidden, there's nothing that drives me more crazy than that. And you see independent films that way quite a bit. You can see where they just skimped on production. If you were able to, because you were, it was instantaneous when I asked you about the masterpieces that were recorded in those decades. But how about film scores? What is the ultimate film score that you've heard? I guess in terms of like both music and maybe just the score itself.
Well, my high water mark is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
All right, can't go wrong there.
That score, there was a score written for the film by a composer by the name of Alex North. And he scored the entire movie. But Stanley Kubrick had edited the movie to these various cues that are in the final film score. And that the Alex North score never swam. He didn't use it.
Really?
After Stanley Kubrick died, North brought the score to the Hollywood Bowl and ran scenes from the film with his score. It was underwhelming. I saw it.
Really?
And
Okay.
and I just went, "Oh my God, that doesn't fit the film at all."
And the Hollywood Bowl is where they're presenting that. They were actually just like they were playing it there.
They were playing scenes from the film,
Okay.
and the orchestra was playing the score.
Okay. And that was underwhelming. Hearing a live orchestra do it, and it just didn't do it justice.
No, it didn't do
Wow.
it justice.
Wow.
With the final film score in your mind, you can't get that out of your head.
Yeah. If you hadn't heard it, right? If you hadn't seen the score, or
That
listened,
would be a different thing.
sure. Yeah. I Okay, so let's maybe travel back. We're in Michigan, and the Ascots are doing their TV show across the pond in Windsor, and the the goal for John Neff and his bandmates is to be the next Beach Boys, the next Dick Dale, the next Chuck Berry, right? The next music sensation. Was that really on your mind? Were you wanting to be a career musician at that point, or because you mentioned recording? As soon as you were in the studio for the first time, you were just entranced by it. So, were you wanted to getting on the recording side, or were you just feeling like music in general was where you wanted to go?
Music in general.
Okay, yeah,
I was on a science curve into chemistry and biology. And once I got a guitar, all that went out the window.
really, okay,
Yeah, and
yeah.
all I wanted to do was play guitar. I slept with my guitar.
Okay, now let me ask honestly. Okay, I'm not Howard Stern, man. I'm never digging for dirt, but I'm going to ask for honesty here. In the amount of times that we all know as musicians, music industry can come and kick our butt over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
Were there a handful of times where you thought, chemistry and biology might not have been a bad idea, or did you really feel like, okay, even with the peaks and the valleys, man, I'm just in this for the long haul?
I was in it for the long haul. I
Okay.
was married 4 times. The
Oh,
music business took 2 of my marriages.
yeah,
Um,
the
it was
mistress.
very tough. Uh, I only ever wanted to do that. I had to do other jobs at various times in my life to survive because I had kids,
Yeah.
and but I always played and I always made records. And even when there was no money in it, I worked in the studio anyway. I skipped half of my senior year of high school and hung out in a recording studio in Utica, Michigan, uh, and learned how to line up tape machines at the tender young age of 18,
Wow.
and how to place microphones, and how to return to 0 on the tape machine for the next take,
Okay.
and all that stuff as a teenager.
Think about all the kids that were skipping school at 18 and they're going to go party and drink in the alleyway across from the school. And you're hanging out in the studio, just obsessed with recording.
I
I
was
love
obsessed with recording. You're absolutely right.
that. At that point, were you working with any sort of nationally recognized artists, or was this just you working your way up to get to that point?
No, it was all local stuff.
Okay. All right.
When I became a session guitar player for Don Davis at United Sound in 1971, I started playing on other people's records, some of which were very big.
Okay.
And I played guitar and synthesizer on about 125 soul records.
Wow. Unbelievable.
I
And
was
though
the staff guitarist at United Sound.
people that aren't musicians might be really amazed to find out that as a session guy who has played on so many records like that and records that have gone on to sell a lot of copies, they might be surprised to find out that session artists really just didn't make that much financially, right? It was
No,
especially when you hear about these records that are massive and they say, "What? You only got paid X amount of dollars?" Yeah, but you're not an owner for those songs, right? And so you're just a
that's right.
hired gun.
But here in the studio in those days, we got Nashville charts. They were just Roman numerals with minor, diminished, major, seventh, and we adjusted the key to the singer, and that
Okay.
way we didn't have to have a new chart made. It was just you follow the chords, but we invented our own parts. And like on I Can See Clearly Now, the little bum 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 bum, that's my Arp Odyssey.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they wanted a candy track and didn't know what. So
Can
I
I?
had this great harmonica preset on my Arp Odyssey that I you put a plastic sheet over the synthesizer and
Okay.
adjusted the sliders to the dots on the sheet, and that's how you change sounds.
Oh my gosh.
And so I set up the harmonica patch, but I had the 2 octaves below switch on.
Okay.
So instead of a harmonica, it sounded like an accordion almost.
All right.
And that's ended up on the record.
No.
And on the very end of the thing, as it's tailing out, there's some tropical birds. And that's my Arp Odyssey too.
Really?
Yep.
Oh my God. You had mentioned that they wanted a candy track. For those people that don't know the recording industry at all, what is a candy track really?
Well, that's gloss.
Okay. Yeah.
It's decorative. It's not substantial to the construction of the song, but it adds flavor to it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. The candy euphemism. That makes sense. I mean, everybody knows. I can see clearly now. Was that one of the first big albums or first singles that you recorded?
That was in February of 1972.
Okay.
It was about the 20th single I had worked on.
Wow.
And we did not meet Johnny Nash. He was in New York.
Okay.
Mike Terry from Epic Records sent through a track that they had recorded in Jamaica that was weak, but the
Really?
song was great.
Yeah.
So he wanted a professional rhythm section on it for radio. He knew it was a radio hit. And so he called his old friend Don Davis, who set it up, and we re-recorded the song. Just the rhythm section.
Wow.
We never met Johnny.
Okay. But you became sort of a foundation of that song, which is amazing because it's transcended time and generations, and you see it on commercials and movies and
Yeah, I know.
When you're out and the song is everywhere, has it become so sort of like subliminal now that you don't even notice until later on? Oh yeah, that's right. That's another song that I recorded. Because you've done a lot of stuff, man. You've been involved in a lot of things, but is that one that sticks out where you always know, oh yeah, this takes me right back to 1972?
It does.
Does it?
And I love that song. And we recorded it on a Saturday morning at United Sound in February of 72. It was very cold out. And we went outside for a smoke break, because we all smoked cigarettes in those days, and came back in and knocked it out in 3 takes.
Wow.
And I got my $150 for it.
Did you? At that point, that probably felt pretty darn good, right?
I was getting $150 per side.
Okay. Per side. So these were singles that you were, yeah. So you were doing an A and a B side then for singles at that point?
Yes, although for Johnny, we only did the A side.
Okay. That it's amazing to think about how vivid those memories are for you, having done so much in the industry. For people that are not musicians, those songs take them to parts in their life that they can still have those vivid memories, right? The first time they made out with a girl in the backseat of a car or something like that, and so they can go right back to the vivid memory where a song takes them to that place in time, whether it be a happy time or a sad time. And I mean, you talked about having gone through 4 marriages, 4 relationships that were, I'm sure at times, again, peaks and valleys. And I would bet that each time you transitioned through one of those relationships, there were songs related to some of those that you just never wanted to hear again. Right.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah. People that have never been divorced or had broken, I mean, everybody's had a heartbreak, right? But it's crazy that so many of the songs that we loved so much had to go by the wayside of past relationships.
Yeah.
Are there any that you felt like you had to sacrifice in a past relationship that just, oh man, that was my song until?
Mostly original songs.
Okay.
And like my last relationship, she was a singer and a songwriter, a lyric writer, and I was the music writer, and we recorded an album together. and then lost our property and broke up. And so that music is sort of poison for me.
I'll bet. You know, most times, I mean, we talked about 4 relationships. I mentioned mistress, as you started discussing it. Getting into a new relationship with somebody that doesn't understand what music is to somebody that just breathes music, they don't understand the connection you might have. And so, it's been alluded to as the mistress in a relationship many times over and over again.
Yep.
Because we it's not that we're out trying to have be unfaithful to a relationship, but there's an element that you just dedicate to in music that's been entrenched since since you started playing, and you have to go into a new relationship with those things understood and explained. And even then there's probably some hurt feelings and feeling like, oh, it's another anniversary and you're going to be in the studio, or you're going to be playing another New Year's Eve gig, or you're going to be away when it's it's that special time in our life. Those are really, really difficult for people to understand. And I applaud every person that can make a relationship work out if you're a career musician.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is. I mean, so I don't want to, talk about anything you don't want to, are not comfortable with, but I know that, some of the discussion that you and I had when we first met, it broke my heart, man, because I knew that you had dedicated your entire life into building studios and having like the most incredible performance and recording environment put together. When those relationships went away, so did that life goal of having these studios. So maybe we can talk about, like the transition. You went from Michigan. Where was the next spot that you went to?
I went to Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Phoenix, then Maui.
Okay. And Maui, was it you had the Steely Dan connection there, right? Wasn't that why you went to build a studio there?
Yeah, Walter and I built a studio in Ulupalakua, Maui.
Wow.
And we recorded Donald Fagen's Kamakiriad album there.
Okay.
And Walter's 11 Tracks of Whack album there. And I recorded Buffy St. Marie, Willie Nelson, Sinead O'Connor, and other people there, as well as Hawaiian albums for my own record label.
Okay. Wow. Let's see, what year was that you went out there?
I went out there in 1979.
Okay.
And I left in 1993.
Wow. So those were real formative times for you too. I mean, because you did a lot of records, obviously outside of Walter Beckett records. Who else were you working with at that point?
Well, the first one in was Willie Nelson.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And we recorded some of his hits for him to sell on TV to raise money for his tax bill.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was in the midst of him trying to get back. He had millions, right, that he was owing?
16 million.
Oh, that's crazy, man.
And we made this record with local players, and his sister came in for piano on a couple of things. And it was to raise money for his tax bill. And Walter Becker said cash only, no credit.
Really?
Yeah, because of Willie's tax problem.
Yeah, right. Was he that much of a business guy, Walter? He knew ahead of time. He'd been burned by musicians and people in the industry.
Oh, yeah. He was very, I'm trying to think of the word, nothing negative.
He's savvy.
He was very street savvy.
Yeah.
And he didn't put up with much from anybody.
I'll bet. Well, you can only get burned so many times, right? Before you just develop sort of a hardened shell. I was thinking about your relationships with people in the studio, because somebody like Willie, you get pretty close to, right?
Yep.
How long was he in the studio with you?
It was about 10 days.
Okay. So in 10 days,
he borrowed my Martin D41 guitar for the record because his was seized.
Oh, really?
Oh, they took his guitar.
Oh my God, he didn't even have a guitar.
And all he had left was the Maui house.
Wow.
And so I loaned him my guitar, We made the record, and then he kept my guitar for another couple of months till he got his back, and he signed it when he gave it back. So I still
Really?
have it today.
That is beautiful, man. I was gonna say in 10 days you can really get to know somebody. You know,
Oh yeah,
you're around each other so many hours that you get past the superficial stuff, you get
yeah,
past the songwriting, and you get past talking about the tax bill, and you get into real stuff. You know,
oh yeah.
real, and on both sides, right? He gets to know more about you, and you know those peaks and valleys I talked about. The relationships you get to develop in the industry, I would imagine, are so precious to you. You know, I would think that I know how deep the relationship went with you and like say with David Lynch, right? In both in the film
Oh
and
yeah.
the music and recording. Um, you know, for people that don't know about that connection and that relationship, do you want to talk a little bit about how it started and what you ended up doing with David?
Sure. After I moved back to the mainland, I built a studio in Phoenix that was too big for the market, and
Okay.
it failed. Um, Everybody with any money went to Los Angeles. It was only a 1 hour plane flight away. So my studio went down. But the architect who had built the Maui studio and designed the control room for my Phoenix studio wanted to form a new company to equip the studios that they built.
Okay.
And they built over 200 studios all around the world. And so they wanted to be able to supply the console, design the patch bay, uh, manufacture the wiring, install the whole studio to these custom owners who had no clue as to what to do with their new studio. Well, David Lynch was one of their clients. They designed his studio.
Okay.
And I met with David and Mary and laid out, I actually wrote them a book, a spiral bound book of a proposal for cinema sound, a 22-foot screen, uh, 56 channel euphonics console, all the outboard gear, three 35 millimeter projectors plus
Oh,
a video projector, and he bought the package.
wow.
So I designed his studio, and then in August of 1997, he had just finished a new Honda Passport commercial. A lot of
Okay.
people don't realize it, but David makes two to four commercials a year. It floats his boat. It lets him paint. He doesn't have
Sure.
to worry about money.
Yeah.
And so he did this Honda Passport commercial, and the studio wasn't finished yet, and he wanted to mix it on a Friday night in his own studio, and had the composer Angelo Badalamenti come in and a sound effects supervisor come in. And I set up a digital video projector on the credenza, and the picture was smaller than the screen, but nevertheless, we got picture up. And I mixed this Honda commercial for him
Wow.
off the clock. He didn't pay me for it.
Sure.
It was part of the studio deal.
And he could
And
see the way the
the next week he came to me and he said, "You're the only one that knows how this place works. You're going to have to run it."
nice.
And I said to him, "I can't afford the pay cut,"
Oh yeah.
because I was building studios all over the world. I was making some good money.
Sure.
And he came back a few days later with a better offer, and I reduced what I wanted, and we came to a deal. And so I left the company I founded and went to work for David,
Wow.
and that jerked me right into the film business.
Interesting. Did you have any ownership or anything left when you left out of the company? Did you at least get to sort of dictate what they did and get a percentage of that or?
No.
Okay.
The architectural partners were upset when I left,
Okay.
and everything got cut off.
Dang, man. Uh, I would imagine, people that really get it, they understand that you'd be willing to take a pay cut in order to do something that was more creative and something you love. And it's not just a pet project. David's willing to compensate you something for it. And it did lead you into relationships that really got you in the film world. So, what was the first real film project that you worked with him on?
We did a small picture that Disney picked up called The Straight Story.
Okay.
It's about this fellow, Alvin Straight, who was estranged from his brother for 10 years. They didn't speak, and the brother had a stroke. Now they're both old men. Alvin doesn't drive anymore, but he has a riding lawnmower. And he rides the lawnmower pulling a trailer from Iowa to Wisconsin to visit his brother before he died. And it's a true story, and we made
Yeah.
the picture. I did the temp music for it. Two of my pieces stayed in the film, and it came out in 1999, released by Disney.
Okay.
It's an excellent little film.
Yeah, I think I remember when that came out, and it's got some big names in it too, doesn't it?
Richard Farnsworth
Okay.
was nominated for an Academy Award for his portrayal of Alvin Straight. Sissy Spacek played his daughter, and Harry Dean Stanton played the brother.
And it seems like David Lynch had a lot of connection with Harry Dean Stanton, right? Because he's been in several Lynch films.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Harry Dean and David were great friends.
That I think synonymous, things about them. I mean, and I did see David's, there was you probably saw this, it kind of went viral, David's response to Putin when Ukraine was being invaded right at the beginning. And David Lynch did tweeted about just talking about decency, just pleading for, sort of sanity at that point. And I'd had a filmmaker, Ian Eames. He was actually an animator who had worked on like Pink Floyd work, and I had him on the show as well. We talked about this right around that time, that David Lynch had used his platform to at least plead for some peace and decency. And I thought that's the first time I've really seen David come out and be vocal about opinions like that. But I applaud him. I think oftentimes he let his work do the talking, and I like that you mentioned that he would do those commercials and commercial work to allow him to paint. His work is very eccentric in some ways and artistic, and doesn't really care so much about Hollywood's appreciation or at least approval, for blockbuster movies or anything like that.
He doesn't care about that at all.
Yeah.
And these movies don't make any money in the theatrical release.
Right.
They make money later through broadcast and pay-per-view and DVD sales and Blu-ray and things like that now. But it's all art to him. They are moving paintings.
That's a beautiful thing. To be able to be in a position where you can get the commercial work to afford you an opportunity to just pursue your passion like that. And how long did you end up working? I mean, are you still doing, because I know that you go to some conventions and you do some of those events that are Lynch specific, or at least another Twin Peak conventions, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I go to the Twin Peaks festivals, but CBS pulled the license. So there's no more Twin Peaks Festival.
Wow. Yeah.
But I went to the Lexington Comic Con in March. There was a big Twin Peaks panel, cast members, and I went to that. And I had music in the return of Twin Peaks, the season 3 that happened 5 years ago. I did not work on the original series.
Okay.
But I did work on the return, and had a beautiful song in it called "No Stars" with Rebecca Del Rio.
And you actually wrote that with her?
I wrote it myself.
Nice.
She wrote the lyrics.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. Good for
David
you.
wrote the English lyrics. She wrote the Spanish lyrics and wrote the melody.
Okay. That it's nice that you can actually be able to combine those passions, right? Where you're writing, you're writing your music and introducing that to the productions. And it's great that David, trusts you to be able to, present that as well, I'm sure. What kind of friendship do you guys have outside of the business?
Well, he was upset when I left.
I'll bet.
In 2005, I left and bought 20 acres in Marin County across from Skywalker Ranch
Wow.
to build my own studio. And went off on that wild goose chase. Well, at the end of my contract in 2004, he said, "You care more about that place than you do this place. So maybe you should go do that." And so we didn't renew the contract and I left. And, but we talk every year on his birthday. I call him and we email a number of times a year. And we have an album out together called Blue Bob.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah, it's quite an album.
Well, do you have some regrets about having made that decision, feeling like it affected the friendship too?
Yes.
How bad?
I shouldn't have left. I had a new love who lived in Marin County and was a software engineer up there. And I just left my old life behind, and that was kind of a mistake. Although I went on and mixed another 20 films and made another 100 and some records in Poland.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing that you didn't let that beat you. And regrets are always tough. I mean, to talk about it and looking back at those things, it's hard not to look backward and think, okay, I wish I wouldn't have, or woulda, coulda, shoulda sort of
Yep.
thing. But um, when it affects friendships and connections and relationships, those are tough. We've all been involved in musical things that if you've made one decision, somewhat adversely affected someone else, and that's tough too. I would imagine that each of those changes between relationships and the moves, if going from Michigan and Phoenix and Hawaii and in Marin County, like all these different like places, I'm sure that there was a part of you that you left behind, when you made each of those moves, and
Yeah.
some relationships unfortunately slip by the wayside. How about some of the real positive ones? The great friendships that you felt like you developed from some of these artists that you've worked with in the studio.
Oh, Walter Becker and I were such good friends. I met him 40 years ago last month.
Wow.
He came on my radio show in Maui to shill for the Pacific Whale Foundation. And he said, "Don't tell people who I am." Because when I opened the door to the radio studio, I said, "Oh, I know you." And he had the long hair still and the beard. And he said, "I'm just here to talk about the whales. Let's not talk about me."
Okay.
And I said, "Fine." So we did. And then I went back to my radio show and he got down on the floor and started picking albums. And he'd hand up an album and say, "Side 2, track 3."
Oh my God, that's
And he
great.
stayed the rest of the morning in my radio studio selecting the music. And the program director came in and got all pissed off and said, "What's wrong with the music today?" And and I said, "That's Walter Becker from Steely Dan." And he said, "Put him on the air." And I said, "I already did. He was here for the whales." And he says, "Well, interview him." I said, "He doesn't want to do that. He just wants to play some records."
That's cool.
And so that's how we met. And it went on from there. He ghost DJ'd 3 or 4 more times on my radio show over the years. And then in 1989, he walked into my Maui recording studio and said, are you making any money here? And I said, yes, because I had a Hawaiian record label too. And he said, but this is too small. He said, let's go build a real studio. And I was floored. I said, you mean together? And he said, yeah. He said, this place looks like a radio station. Let's go build a studio. So we went out looking at property and settled on 7 acres in Ulupalakua.
Wow.
And he was probably the greatest friend I had in the last 30 years in the music business.
Wow.
He supported me. He was very generous, and we went on and built a $2 million studio and made some wonderful records there.
I love that. You know, and the fact that he never wanted to call attention to himself is a real testament to his character too.
Oh yes.
I mean, that's kind of been you too. You know, everybody that has known John Neff, I don't know a person on this planet that has anything bad to say about you. And the people that have worked with you, you know, revere you. You know, I had just had some great conversations with Skip Von Kusky here, and I love Skip. And when he saw that I was going to be talking to you, he said, "Oh my God, yes, you've got to." He said, "You got to tell him." Skip said, "Hey, I think Skip is one of like the region's most sort of like most valuable yet underappreciated talents. You know, I've worked with him for 25 years in different albums and looking at all the different stuff that he can do. It's crazy, you know, that he's a gifted individual.
He's a wonderful guy, and I will put that up against Walter as one of my best experiences.
Wow,
Working
really?
with Skip, we've scored 4 movies together.
Wow.
And including one, The Hours Till Daylight. He sat in the control room with his cellotronic rig all wired in, watched the movie and improvised it, and scored the whole film in about 6 hours.
Unbelievable, man. Yeah, he's got that. There's a gift in that guy too. If you don't know Skip Von Kusky, I'll put a link here in the interview afterwards. We had him on.
All right.
He did some live video as well on this show, and he's a talented dude. Go see him with both Portland Cello Project, and you can see him do his Cellotronic solo project. And
Groovy Wallpaper.
right, yeah, that's a crazy project. Oh
It
my God,
is.
those
It's
guys are
on.
yeah, incredible, man. I you know, it's interesting. I see that a huge fan, I think, of John Neff too. Larry Turing here is here in the chat. I can see him on YouTube
Oh,
there.
wonderful.
And Melinda, I'm glad to see you here too. Melinda's out in Illinois, and she's boy, this girl, talk about a testament to real dedication to music. She's been at so many gigs across the world, really, where I've been touring. She's been battling cancer for a long time, and I'm grateful that she's here right now. And so, Melinda, thank you for being here, and
Yes.
and for
Hello.
all this. It's a horrible thing that we've had to see so many of our friends go through, right? I mean, John, I know that you've certainly had friends that have had medical just difficulties, and you've had a handful yourself too, man. Did
I'm
that
a cancer survivor. 4 years now.
Oh, buddy, that I love seeing that full remission right now.
Yes.
Amen, buddy. Well, Melinda, there's yet another champion in your corner.
You bet.
How about, and musically, I know that you'd been doing the Christy Joseph project. Are you still playing as well? I know that you retired from recording. Are you gigging some still?
I am.
Okay.
I still play bass in Christy Joseph's band, Christy
Okay.
Joseph and the Purpose. We have 4 albums out,
Okay.
including The Awakening, which was the last album I recorded at the Lab Studio last year. That just came out, and we're doing a CD release party June 26th on that.
Oh, where's that?
That'll be at Christy's house. She
Okay.
built a stage in the back. She's got a great big place in Garden Home.
Nice.
And she built a stage there. So we're going to have it at her house.
June 26th. Okay.
Uh, I've been asked to play a new track on a David J. and Darwin Miners track called Night Crickets.
Okay.
And so I just bought a new guitar. I've got 8 guitars now. I sold 42,
Oh my God.
but I've
Wow.
bought a couple back. I just can't be without a certain number of guitars.
Sure.
And I just bought a new Rickenbacker 12 string.
Oh, you did.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I'm working on that. My playing is out of practice,
okay.
but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
And that 12 string has such a beautiful sound that it's my vehicle back.
There's some of that candy you're talking about in that guitar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That I know that you sold off a lot of stuff in the studio. You sold off your drums. I'm trying to think of who got your DWs.
My son.
Oh, he did. Good deal.
He bought my kit, 4 snares, and I had a 62 Gene Krupa Slingerland
Oh,
snare
wow.
that he sold to Jose at Revival Drums. And but he kept all the rest of the drums, and he's playing drums in a heavy metal band right now.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's a bass player, but
Okay.
he had those drums when he was a senior in high school. I got those drums, and he's played them all his life.
Wow. That's great, man. What's the band called?
I don't know.
Okay.
They're
Well,
brand new.
okay. That's cool though. That's great to keep it in the family for sure.
Yeah.
I and so what I'd like to do for sure when we finish up, I'm going to have this archived at accesskevin.com. I'll put a link to Christie's event as well on June 26th.
All right.
But before we go, I was just going to say there are a few things that I ask folks consistently on this show that I think are interesting. People that know John Neff, you've got a lot of fans out there, but I'm interested to know if they think they know you, what might they be surprised by? Is there a guilty pleasure that John is interested in that they'd be like, is there a music style or fascination with ice cream or TV shows or anything like that might be a guilty pleasure for you?
I have 2 guilty pleasures.
Okay.
One, I watch a bunch of cop shows on TV. I
Okay.
just like them. I don't know why. They're silly.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I smoke weed in my retirement.
Okay. Is that guilty?
I didn't smoke for 41 years, and I started smoking again, and I really enjoy it. Not
Yeah.
too heavily, but just for the heck of it.
Sure. Well, did that happen? Did that sort of formulate during the cancer process, or did you just get into it even after that?
When it was made legal,
Okay.
I used to really enjoy this.
Okay.
I haven't smoked since the 70s,
All right.
and I wanted to try it again.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that you should feel guilty for that then.
It's
Uh,
legal.
Yep. My pop is also going through cancer, and he'd been sober for 53 years now, and
Oh,
really
excellent.
he felt like he just did not want to break sobriety, but all the recommendations from his doctor and everybody there in Montana were saying, at least try some edibles to help, with the treatment, going through chemo and radiation,
Yes.
and he finally broke down and did that, and he felt so guilty about it. And I'm like, man, come on. Your entire life, you've worked towards just being this strong, stable, solid being. Indulge a little bit in whatever can bring you joy,
I
And so
agree.
I think, what you recognize in that in yourself and realizing I've earned this is a pretty special thing. Um, the
And
other the other thing I was going to say, for folks, I never wanted to sound like it's pretentious or anything, but I'm interested in people's legacy. When you're looking back over your career, like decades from now, when you're nearing the end of John Neff's time, and you talked about family and you talked about relationships, what is it that you want to be able to look back on and have those people look at John Neff and remember you for?
good records.
Okay.
I mean, all of it was spent on making the best records I could make. And some, like Journey's Revelation album, went on to be multi-platinum. Donald Fagen's Kamakiriad album went platinum. I just wanted to make good records, and I pursued sonic perfection all my career, and you can't get it. It's not possible, but striving for it is the joy.
I love that. That's a real fantastic answer. What's an album that you've done that should have been multi-platinum that just for some reason just didn't get the breaks?
Strange Tales of the Late West by Middlejohn.
Okay.
It was an album, a crazy country album I made in Maui in the mid 80s. 14 people die in the course of this album in the songs.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's an old Western album. And it is so good. And the performances are so good. The songs are so good. It's a shame it never hit.
Yeah. Wow. Just knowing that, being able to go back and look at these things, if the album's still available, if you can still get it, it'd be great to be able to track that down.
No, I have the only copy.
Really?
Yeah.
On vinyl?
On CD.
On CD. Okay. Yeah, man.
It was all done on tape.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those memories are gonna, they're gonna pass on in your legacy, really. Yeah. It's unfortunate because we all know records that you think, oh, that should have easily been, up there with Sergeant Pepper, but in our own mind. And I think it's somewhat sad, but also amazing that there are such creatives out there. And it's great that they have you facilitating, the ability to get that music out there. You've earned your retirement, my friend. You certainly have, but I'm glad you're still playing it live. And
I'll never put down the guitar and the bass. I love them both.
Do you have a favorite guitarist now, like modern guitarist?
I really enjoyed the new guy in Steely Dan the other night.
Oh, yeah. What was his name? I'm sorry.
Adam Rogers.
Okay.
He's the new second guitarist in Steely Dan. He's excellent. And he also worked on Walter Becker's 11 Tracks of Whack that we did out at the Maui studio. So he has a connection to the band through Walter.
Okay.
Who is no more, but
right.
Nevertheless, Walter was half of the band.
Just that gig is almost impossible to come into, right? I mean, I know like Keith Carlock, I love his drumming so much, man. Like it's such an amazing drummer, but anybody coming into Steely Dan, you're going to have haters out there, no matter how good, what a contribution you make to the band. There's always going to be somebody that, has something to say if you're not original. Right. But
yes. And I see that on the forums, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. Well, a lot of times those purists, if you will, are not true creatives. I think, musicians are out there that are pointing fingers and talking about certain artists or certain bands that are just not worthy. And I think, what have you done to be creative and influence and contribute to your art? It's more about like living anonymously in forums and dogging guys like this. And I went to McCartney 2 weeks ago. I took my son. He's such a diehard Beatles fan. At 10, he knew more about the Beatles than I ever did. And I was so grateful to take him to Seattle to go see the show. And I was brought to tears by his joy, watching my son, who's 20 now, laughing hysterically to the point of tears because he was so happy. And McCartney was unbelievable to me. He did 37 songs. He's 80 this next month, right?
Wow.
And he played over 3 hours. And by the third hour, right, when he's going into his encore, that's where his voice started to crack. But he still sang with such energy and passion, and his humor was there and his humility was there. There were things about his performance that unless you're really a professional musician, you wouldn't pick up on some of the delivery, and I know it's canned. He says the same stuff in every town, but he gave attention to his monitor guys and the guys driving the trucks and the guys selling the merchandise and the guys that are doing lights and all the guys that never get recognition, that it's such a thankless job for. He was calling attention to all these people. And I thought,
That's beautiful.
what a class act, man. And afterwards, I saw people in the posts talking about this guy who should just hang it up. And I was, are you kidding me? Like,
Oh,
like every ounce of the money spent to go to see a show like that is money well spent. I mean, the guy's a living legend, probably the greatest songwriter on the planet, right? Living
yeah.
songwriter. And I had no regrets at all. But to see my 20-year-old and a lot of younger kids even just enthralled with what he presented at that show, that was amazing to me. I loved seeing that, thinking, 10, 15, 20-year-olds getting into McCartney now as they might have back in, the early 60s. That it was eye-opening and fascinating and again, encouraging, because if there's not a new generation of music appreciators out there going to shows like this, they'll consume stuff that just is disposable,
I know.
Do you sometimes feel like that guy, just get off my lawn, that old guy, looking at new music and thinking,
In some ways, when I hear some modern mixes,
yeah,
I go, oh man, listen to some old records and learn how to make a band sound good.
right.
But it's funny, I saw the Beatles twice, in 1964 and 1966 at Olympia Stadium in Detroit. And I met them all over a 34-year period, starting with John Lennon in December of 71 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and ending with Paul McCartney at Staples Center, December 1st, 2005. I was a guest of Rusty Anderson in the band and got to meet Paul and got a picture with him. And it was wonderful. And the show was fabulous.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's going to go out there and put on a weak show. My son instantly went back and got us tickets to Ringo, for October back here.
Oh yeah, I'm going.
We'll definitely look forward to seeing you there. I have a feeling it's not going to be as powerful maybe as McCartney's show, but we played with a flock of seagulls. We did the Greek Theater the night after Ringo did his All-Star show.
Oh,
and we had the main dressing room, and the producer of the show came in and said, "Oh, yeah, you're in the chair that Ringo was in last night," and I got goosebumps because I thought,
yeah,
oh, man, sharing the air, right? Well, within the last 24 hours with this legend. But I am really glad that we're still able to see some of this in our time, right? And the fact that you got to see him and experience them, but influence people as very much in the way that they did as well. So
yeah,
I'm grateful to get time here, and really look forward to catching you. I'm going to try and be in town for Christy Joseph's show on the 26th. I think it'd be great to see that. So
I will send you the details.
Okay. And I'll put a link to this. Yeah, it'll be up at accesskevin.com in about 8 minutes. So John Neff, really, man, I think you and I could probably talk for another 8 hours and not even touch on half of the career that you've done. But congratulations on a career well earned and definitely well spent. And I'm grateful that I get to know you a little bit more, folks. If you are interested in catching John, I'll also put a link to his discography. It's miles long, and so you can take a look at that and his filmography too. So I'm grateful too, man, that you kicked cancer's butt and you were able to share some time with me. If you wouldn't mind, guys, and you got here late, go back to the beginning of this, hit subscribe and like this video so you can go back and look at the other 247 videos that we've got on All Access Live. Got some great guests coming up. I've got Sugar Hill Gang, if you remember those guys back from. So I got Master G and Doug Wimbish from Living Color. They'll be on in the next week. And
Doug,
yeah, do you know Doug well?
no, I only met him once. Great guy.
Unbelievable dude. Yeah, man. We spent a bunch of time on the 80s cruise about a month ago, and I had no idea that he was the original bassist in Sugar Hill Gang too.
Oh,
But I'm a big Living Color fan, and we talked all about, those early days. And he's been on a lot of records too. Did not even know. He's one of those cats that just, in New York, man, they get a hold of a handful of dudes and use them as those ghost players,
you bet.
But so yeah, man, folks, subscribe to the channel, go back and if you're in the area, please go check out Christy Joseph and watch John Neff do his thing. So John, thank you very much. And Larry, thanks again for commenting here. It's been a blast. Have a wonderful week, my